Okay, so we've learned about the elements of design and the fact that they are building blocks and tools for artists to use, regardless of what medium they're working in. I'm now going to share with you an example of what you are going to create as this for this lesson. So this is the Elements of Art Scavenger Hunt, and using your medium of photography, you're going to take photographs that have images that dominate each of these elements of design. So let me show you what I mean. So these are mine. So here's line. Obviously, that is the predominant element of design. There are different line weights here. You see thicker lines, thinner lines. Some of the lines are even just shadows. And as you can see, this is a fan. But the overwhelming element of design here is without a doubt line. Not so much color, right? Not a lot of depth, so it isn't about space. It's all about line. And that's what you're going to look for when you're doing these slides is what can you find in your home to photograph that really brings home the element. Now this is the element of shape. So I have this wooden bowl on a desk in my dining room. And if I had photographed this from the side, it would not be shape because we would see how three-dimensional it is. We would get a sense of its form. But because I photographed it from above, we're seeing a circle sitting on top of a square. Again, if I'd photographed it from the side, I would not have been able to use this as my shape slide. But I really did find the angle that provided me with the shapes. This is form, very three-dimensional feeling. One could argue that I could have used this also for texture because look how soft everything feels. So that would have been good. But I really thought that this was so form-like. Everything feels very three-dimensional. And most of that has to do with light and shadow. And also the angle at which I photographed this. There's my dog, King Solomon, snoozing in a very soft, yummy bed. And so all very three-dimensional, lots of sense of form. Here's my image for color. There's tons of bright color here. There's contrasting colors. There's a lot of warm color, and then we have that one cool green apple. But again, dominant element here is color. You could argue that there's a sense of depth here or space, and that I would agree. And good photographs, good works of art often contain several of the elements of design. When you have several, you generally have a nice work of art. But this is my representation of color. Here we have texture, pretty self-explanatory. There's no question that when you look at this, you feel the bumpy texture of this everything bagel. And so that was an easy one for me. I spotted that. I'd actually photographed something else for texture, and then my husband and I were making bagels, and I went, oh, wait a minute, this is a much better image. And so I took this picture and replaced it in my slideshow because this was really fun looking. Here's value, a reminder. Value is the lightness and darkness of a color. One could say shading or tints. Tints would be the lightest colors, shades would be the darkest colors. So I thought it was kind of cool that these very tightly growing together iris plants, if I got really close to them, I would only get the greens, right? It's sort of what they call a monochromatic image. Green is the color, but we're getting different values of green, lights and darks. Here's an image for space. So I took my camera. This is by the way, use your phones. This is what we're going to use for this lesson. I took my iPhone, I got down very low to get a dramatic sense of that pathway going from wide to narrow. And I got a wonderful sense of space. Color and form. Now I'm beginning to show you photos that contain more than one element of design so that you really get a sense of how you become good photographers, getting more than one. So color is clearly vibrant here, the greens and the pinks, and in the background as well, the red plates. Color is beautiful here. And there's also a sense of form. If you recall, I talked about the fact that cylinders are the variation on a rectangle. If you have a cylinder, It's the equivalent to a form, and so these little cylinders of sushi worked really well. Here there are three elements of design. If you'll see, there's a sense of space. Not only is this railing going back away from the camera, but you can see more space in the reflection of the doorway. So there's sort of a short set of space going to the house from the camera angle, but then there's deep space in the reflection. There's also color, there's reds and yellows, and line. Line is everywhere in this photograph. The line of the leading railing, the line of the siding on the house, the line surrounding the door, and if you look in the reflection, the lines of the trees, the lines in the flag, and the gate that keeps my little dog from jumping off the porch has a crisscrossed diamond-shaped lines. So the last thing I want to tell you about, because it goes hand in hand whenever you take photographs, it's important to learn about the rule of thirds. And the rule is simple. If you place the subject matter or the focal point of your picture, and sometimes there's more than one third of the way over or one third of the way up, right? So this is a third of the way up and over, you have a beautiful composition. When you put things dead center, sometimes your subject matter calls for that and it can make for a nice photograph, but for the most part, when artists are designing composition, you want to use the rule of thirds. It makes for much more interesting works of art and photos. So here's some examples with the grid. So the wine glass is a third of the way over. This delicious dessert is one third of the way up, right? And so these photographs show how these artists carefully chose rule of thirds for an interesting composition. They didn't put the wine glass dead center, nor is this dead center, and it makes for a better composition. Here's another example. So maybe this is something you do at home. You could stack up some fruit and some bright light. This would be great for your color slide. Notice, though, that the artist chose to put the stack of clementines a third of the way in. Even this round table, the line is placed a third of the way up. You could argue that this is an example of color or of line, lots of line in this image as well. Here's the rule of thirds. The cupola with the weather vane is a third of the way over, and even this little detail of the weather vane is a third of the way down. This could be used as an example of line and also of space, mostly space. I feel the depth of this landscape, right? This is a very dynamic image. Notice again that the subject matter is a third of the way over, these darts making contact. And this would be a wonderful image if you were highlighting line and also color. Okay, here's another one. Notice where the figure is. He's a third of the way over and a third of the way down. And I see a sense of depth, very dramatic sense of space here. I also see, well, it's certainly not about color, is it? It's not about color. It's about line and space, absolutely, and the rule of thirds. And then we have these wonderful red shoes. So right away I would say, oh, well, this is a perfect image for color. Absolutely perfect. But notice where they are. They're a third of the way over. And this piece, line, that beautiful sweeping line. I'm not sure what that is. It could be it's I don't know what it is. It's a peel, or I'm not sure, but it's a really beautiful photograph. Notice the busy part of it is a third of the way over and a third of the way up. You could argue that there's a sense of space here and maybe color, but I think this is all about line. I think that's my last slide. Thank you for your attention. Off you go. There'll be a link sent to you where you will click on it and you'll go into a blank Google slide format, a copy. You'll simply make a copy, put your name on it, and off you go to creating your photos and putting them into your own Google Slides. Please design the first slide as well. We need your name. We need elements of design scavenger hunt. Please list the elements of design, and then on each slide, I think they're already listed, but be sure to put the element of design.